So what weapons should you be using on Xilonen? In this video we're going to be ranking her swords in a tier list, and we're going to be seeing which of them are going to be the best to use on her. She's a little bit complicated in terms of like which swords are going to be the best, so hopefully we're going to explain it pretty quick. Before we continue with that though, I'm going to explain her weapon requirements and how she works very quick, so we both understand based around what we're going to be ranking these weapons. Alright, so Xilonen is mainly going to be just a support. She's going to be providing you a lot of like supportive capabilities. We're not going to go through them right now, but all you need to know is that all of these supportive capabilities are not really going to scale with anything. They're just flat amounts. They're just going to scale with her talent levels, and that's it. And this is just her main role. She's a support. Her supportive capabilities doesn't really need anything to scale off of. So that's going to make her very easy to build. You pretty much don't even really need to build her technically, but also it's going to be confusing on which weapons you're going to need to choose. So now that we know her main thing, her support is not really going to be affected by any weapons, we're just left with a couple of things, either her energy and her damage in general. Her damage is going to be very low to the point where most people are not really going to be wanting to build it. It's definitely not going to matter, especially in most of her teams. The only source of damage is going to be her elemental burst, and it's kind of meh in general. Personally, I might build some crit on her, but it's like meta-wise, I don't really think it's worth it. It's pretty much the same thing as Zhongli. It's just like a matter of preference. Do you want to build him with only like HP or HP and crit and stuff like that? But meta-wise, the correct choice is definitely going to be to just skip crit altogether. So that's for damage. Your damage is going to be super low, so you just don't want to build it. That means no crit. And everything here is for a support Xilonen, by the way. DPS is going to be very different. Obviously, you just want to build crit and everything. But yeah, damage is not really going to be built. The only other thing is going to be her healing. Her healing is going to scale off with her defense. But the thing is, she already heals enough. So if you want to stack defense, I mean, you can, and she's going to be healing more, but you're not really going to gain any benefits from it unless you're using her signature weapon. Otherwise, you're just stacking defense for legit nothing. The final thing is going to be energy recharge. That's pretty much just you want to spam her burst at a good uptime. You can have enough energy recharge, and that's it. So those are the three things she might need. If you focus on building damage, you're going to need a lot of crit rate, and crit damage is going to be super hard, and that means you're probably going to neglect the defense and energy recharge by a lot. So I definitely would recommend just skipping crit altogether and focusing on building energy recharge and defense. That way she's going to be healing a lot more, and you're going to be spamming your burst more, which is good. So finally, for weapon requirements as a final list, I would say the top priority is just going to be defense, so you can max out her healing. The second priority is going to be energy recharge, so you have a good uptime on her burst. And then finally, any supportive capabilities on any weapon are going to be super good. She's a support in general, so any supportive weapons are going to fit her pretty well. So yeah, knowing that, with that being said, let's move on to rank her weapons in a tier list. We're going to go through this pretty quickly. I explained before what she needs, so we're not going to spend too much time on every weapon. Starting off with the cool steel, 3 stars, just attack. Doesn't really matter at all. Let's go in D tier. Harbinger of Dawn is just going to be the crit. For a DPS build, it might be super good, but otherwise, it's just not as good. As I said before, you don't really need to build crit on her like that. It's not terrible though. Crit is going to be kind of valuable, so I'll put it at B tier, but it's definitely not really the weapon you want to use on her. Traveler's Handy Sword is going to be defense, which is super good, but it's going to be a pretty small amount of defense, so I'll put it at A tier. It's not an S tier weapon. Dark Iron Sword is just elemental mastery, probably like D tier. Fillet Blade is just attack, so it's D tier. And then finally, the Skyrider Sword is just going to give you some energy recharge, which is pretty decent, so I'll also put that A tier. It's just like an energy recharge stat stick. And the low base stack is not really going to matter at all because she doesn't need it. Now, moving on to the 4-star options, we have the Favonius Sword. It's just going to give you energy recharge, but then also gives the Favonius passive energy particles to your whole party members. That's going to make Xilonen even a better support because she's going to be kind of a small battery for the rest of your team, which is pretty good. So yeah, the Favonius has energy recharge and then also like a supportive capability, so that's going to be perfect for Xilonen. For that, I think the Favonius deserves S tier in general. It's going to fit her pretty well. The Flute is just attack, probably D tier. Sacrificial is going to have an energy recharge substat, but the passive is not really going to be as good. You probably won't really benefit from it as much, so it's just going to be an energy recharge stat stick. I'll put it at A tier. Royal Longsword, attack, D tier. Lion's Roar, attack, D tier. Proud Type Rancor, physical damage, so it's going D tier. Iron Sting, elemental mastery. It's just damage bonus too from the passive. I don't know, I guess C tier, but you just don't want to use it anyways. Blackcliff Longsword is just a crit damage, so I'll probably put it at low B tier. All the crit weapons in general are probably going to be B tier. The Black Sword, the exact same thing, so it's going B tier. The Alley Flashes, elemental mastery and damage bonus. I guess like C tier. Sword of Dissension, that's D tier. Faster and Desire, just for the energy recharge. It's also gonna be like an energy recharge stat stick, so I'll put it like low A tier. Amino Makagachi attack, so it's going D tier. We have the Cinnabar Spindle. It's actually one of the few swords that's gonna give you defense, and it's actually a super good amount of defense. I think at level 90 it's gonna be like 70%, somewhere around that, or maybe less, I don't remember, but in general it's gonna be a super good amount of defense. The passive is just gonna increase your damage, which doesn't really matter as much, but just as a defense stat stick, I would think it's gonna be super good, so I'll put it at A tier. I don't think it's S tier just because it's like a pure defense stat stick. No real benefits outside of that really, no support benefits, nothing, but it's still a pretty good defense stat stick, so I just put it at top of A tier. Kagutsurubi Ishin, just attack, probably D tier too. D tier is gonna be super filled. Sapwood Blade, it's just a small amount of energy recharge, and then the passive is completely useless pretty much. It's just the elemental mastery. It's a small energy recharge stat stick. I'll probably put it like probably like high B tier, something like that. I wouldn't really say it's A tier because all of the weapons here are gonna be just much better. Sipho's, just elemental mastery, probably like C tier. It also gives you energy recharge, but it's gonna be a super small amount, so yeah, I think C tier is the right place. Prized Ishin, just attack, so it's going D tier. Tsukabo Shigure, elemental mastery, probably like D tier. Wolf Fang is gonna be crit rate, and then it's gonna boost your damage by quite a bit. It's gonna give you damage bonus to your elemental skill and burst, which is the biggest source of your damage. It's also gonna increase your elemental skill and burst crit rate, just by a little bit, but yeah, it's still pretty decent. I think it's probably B tier too. As I said, most of the crit weapons and damage weapons in general is just gonna be B tier. They're not terrible, but they're not really the weapons you want to use on her, so yeah, let's just put that B tier. Finale of the Deep attack, passive is just whatever, so it's going D tier too, I think. Fleuve Sunder Ferryman, it's gonna be a good energy recharge stat stick. It's gonna give you a lot of energy recharge, especially after you use your elemental skill, which is pretty good. It's also gonna give you crit rate for your elemental skill, but that doesn't really matter as much. In general, I would put it at like probably A tier. Good energy recharge, but no real like supportive capabilities, so yeah, it fits A tier. The Doc's Hand Assistant, is just HP. There is some like elemental mastery and energy recharge, but it's kind of whatever. I put that like C tier. You don't really want to use it on Xilonen. Sword of something here, just attack, straight to D tier. Sturdy Bone, same thing, just attack, some normal attacks, damage and stuff like that. For, you know, support Xilonen, it's not going to be good, so it's going like C tier, or D tier actually. And then finally you have the Craftable Flute of Espetal. It's going to give you a super huge amount of defense, and then also more defense from the passive. In total, that's going to give you like, I think that's a 70% defense substat. Let me check actually. Yeah, okay, that's going to be a 69% defense substat, plus a R5, that's going to be a 32% defense from the passive. So in total, it's going to give you more than 100% defense, which is pretty good. Now, this weapon is not really going to be like a supportive weapon, as I said before, but just because it's going to give you a huge amounts of defense, I think it deserves S tier. It's going to be like bottom S tier, mainly just for the lack of good weapons for Xilonen in general, or not like good weapons, weapons that she needs more. So yeah, I think it deserves S tier, like low S tier, but it's a huge defense stat stick, so I think it's worth it. Now moving on to the 5-star options, we have the Aquila Favonia, just physical damage and then attack, whatever, probably like D tier, and nothing really special about the weapon. Skyroad Blade, it's pretty much just like an energy recharge stat stick, so it's going A tier too, just the same as most of energy recharge stat sticks, nothing really special. Freedom Sword, the substat is going to be kind of bad, but the passive is going to be pretty good. It's just like a supportive passive. It's also going to give you some damage bonus, and then also give attack to the rest of your party member, which most likely you're going to use her in the party where the main DPS needs attack, so it's going to be pretty good. And also it's going to buff their normal attacks, charge attacks, and stuff like that, which is pretty good. So yeah, it's a good supportive weapon. I think it deserves S tier. It's one of the few supportive swords. It depends on which team you're going to be playing her in, obviously. That's going to decide whether or not the supportive features are going to be good or not, but in general, it's a good supportive sword. It's going to work with most like DPSs, so yeah, I think it's going to be an S tier weapon for Xilonen. The substat is not good, but I think it's worth it, so I'll put it like S tier too. Summit Shaper, just attack, straight to D tier. Primordial Jade, it's just like a crit rate stat stick, so it's going B tier with the rest of the crit rate stat sticks. Mist-Splitter is just crit damage and then some elemental damage bonus, probably D tier too, or not D tier, B tier, sorry. It's just the exact same thing. All of the damage weapons are going to be here. Exact same thing with the Haran Gippiku. It's going B tier. Key of Hashnisu is just HP and then some elemental mastery. It can give elemental mastery to the rest of your party members, but I don't think Xilonen can activate that. It needs 3 stacks with her elemental skill. She only hits with her skill once, so I don't think she's going to be able to activate that. So it's going straight to D tier. Light of Foliar Inclusion, just that crit damage. Then just damage bonus to your normal attacks. B tier 2, just for the crit. Splendor of Tranquil Waters, exact same thing too, really. So it's going B tier. tier. Yuraku Misuguri, that crit damage too. It's also gonna give you damage bonus to your normal attacks and your elemental skill. It can give you some small amount of defense, so it's not gonna be as bad. I put it like low A tier. It's a little better than all of these weapons. Absolution, a small amount of crit damage, and then damage bonus, kind of whatever. Also B tier. B tier is just super filled. And then finally, her signature weapon is gonna give you a ridiculous amount of defense, even more defense from the passive, and then some elemental damage bonus. And then it's also gonna give elemental damage bonus to all of your party members based around your defense, which is super good. It's a very good supportive weapon. If you build enough defense to maximize this weapon, then it's gonna give you around like 25% damage bonus to the rest of your party members, which is super good. It's definitely gonna be top of S tier. It's her best in slot. It's gonna give her everything she needs. But yeah, as you guys can see, she has a good free to play option, and she doesn't really need any options really. All of these are gonna be like bonuses, either to get more healing or to make sure you can spam your burst, and that's it. She doesn't really need any weapons, so yeah, I think she's super free to play friendly and easy to build. But yeah, that was the video, guys. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you guys next video. Peace.